This is the Merschman Seeds Ag Weather Briefing, June 9th, 2018. I'm John Felt. Well, in case you didn't see my post yesterday, I wanted to start out by showing you that May ended up in the record books as a record warm month for the U.S., and that included a good part of the Corn Belt as well. Now, it was a record warmest in these areas in red. So if you're in parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, if it seemed warm, it was the all-time, out of 124 years, all-time warmest month. Sort of interesting that April was one of the cooler months. So talk about variability. Now we look at precipitation. It was a lot more spotty. Areas in green during the month of May received more precipitation than normal, and areas in brown, such as in Indiana, less than normal. Now right now the weather story and for this week is going to be this stalled front right over the central Corn Belt, especially from Iowa and then eastward into Illinois and Indiana. That's going to be our pesky rain producer throughout a good part of the week. And it started off last week. You can see we had a fairly widespread area of rain over parts of the region, especially over South Dakota and Nebraska, 1 to 3 inches of rain. But then as we got into Minnesota, Iowa, and the eastern Corn Belt states, you can see it was a lot more scattered. Some areas, for example, northern Illinois, 2 inches or more. Southern Illinois, not much at all. So we see that a lot in summertime, much more scattered precipitation. Now there are some areas that need additional rain, and these are these areas in yellow, orange, and red. And you can see Kansas still needs multiple inches of rain. Northern Missouri could use more rain right along the Iowa-Missouri border. Scattered areas of Illinois and Indiana as well. But overall, we're not in too bad a shape. And we even have some areas that are trending on the wet side as seen in green. So as long as in this soil moisture, and these are estimates, so don't look at your area and say, hey, it's not perfect. But generally unshaded or areas in green are good. Dark green, I get more concerned about being a bit too wet. Now over the last week, temperatures were above normal. Remember I talked to you about that pattern. We have this high pressure aloft here, and it's ridging up to the north, and that's why the central part of the U.S. is experiencing unusual heat. Then as we get over to the east, you're not under the influence of that ridge so much, so temperatures are more normal, or at least maybe 2 or 3 degrees above normal. So this week, not a whole lot of change. The jet stream is flowing right over the middle part of the U.S., the central and eastern Corn Belt. That's going to bring some atmospheric energy, give us that chance of rain. The ridge is still over the southwest U.S., and that's going to mean once again another week of very warm temperatures right over the western Corn Belt, and then moderating as we go east. So by the time you're in the far eastern Corn Belt, temperatures are fairly close to normal. Precipitation this week looks like a fairly soaking rain in a number of areas from the central to eastern Corn Belt. Right along that frontal boundary, areas in purple are about 1.5 inches, areas in red are about 3 inches, so this could be about a 1 to 3 inch rain event right through the core of the axis of rain. I overlaid here, this is the drought monitor here, areas hashed here, and this is where we need more rain, and then I put the area of yellow is where rain is falling. So most of this rain is going to fall in areas that are not in drought, with the exception of that area in northern Missouri and along the Iowa border. That's an area that could benefit from this rain. I think the entire area in summertime, we can always use 1 inch of rain a week, which would be ideal. So it's one of these things that to some degree this rain is going to be welcome, and if we get into a drier period over the next 2 or 3 weeks, most of this rain could even be welcome. What's not going to be welcome is a chance of severe weather, severe storms. This is Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and these strong storms could produce damaging winds and hail. So let's take a look at the jet stream, just looking out ahead here. And what we have is we have 5-day chunks. And I want you to sort of look at this area down here over Texas. That ridge sort of stays anchored in place, but at the same time, we sort of get this area of blue here, and this is rotating around. So when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking the eastern Corn Belt is going to be vulnerable towards some intrusions of some cool fronts and some reinforcing cool air. The western Corn Belt is going to stay on the relatively warm side. And if we look at temperatures here, I think it sort of shows that. These are 5-day chunks. It's starting right, I'll show you when it's starting right here. So you can see that the center of heat right from South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, sort of neutral in the central Corn Belt, and then over the eastern Corn Belt, temperatures are close to normal. So Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, after the rain this week, it looks like temperatures fairly close to normal. So I think that's pretty optimistic overall heading into summer. We're getting ample rain, and temperatures right now, with the exception of the west, don't look too bad. So here's week 1. I talked about weeks 1 rain, green, more rain than normal. And here's week 2. This would actually be pretty good if it did occur in this area a little bit further south and west. Week 2 summertime precipitation outlooks are always not the highest confidence, but that would be sort of nice if that did happen. So your takeaway from today's briefing, here's that front right here, and that front's going to stall, or it is stalled. It's going to have some severe weather. It's going to produce some soaking rain over multiple days over the parts of the central and eastern Corn Belt. Much of this rain will be needed, but some not. Could have some excess rain if you get above the 2 to 3 inches. But if it dries out next week, we might be looking at this and saying this was a overall beneficial as we get into the hot summer months. That's this week's briefing. Have a great week. Talk to you again next weekend.